Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why, in a world full of noise, the wisest voices are often the quietest? Why those who seem to say the least often end up with the most? We live in a time where everyone is speaking, but how many are actually listening? We chase success, happiness, recognition, and we shout to be heard, but maybe, just maybe, the real power lies not in what we say, but in what we choose not to. Today, I want to challenge the way we think about success. I want to introduce a radical idea: be silent, you will get everything in your life. And not because silence is weakness, but because silence, when chosen with intention, is strength, clarity, and strategy. Let me tell you why. In a world that constantly encourages us to speak up, express ourselves, and make noise to be noticed, the idea that silence builds inner strength and emotional control may seem counterintuitive. Yet when we take a closer look, we find that some of the most influential and centered individuals in history were not those who spoke the most, but those who chose their words carefully, embraced stillness, and cultivated strength from within. Silence is not just the absence of speech. It is a deliberate, conscious decision to pause before reacting. It is the space we give ourselves to breathe and reflect and reset. In that space, we begin to notice our thoughts, our emotions, and our triggers. And it's in that very awareness that true strength is born. Emotional control does not come from suppressing our feelings, but from understanding them. And we can't understand what we don't take time to observe. When we are silent, we are no longer reacting to the chaos outside of us, we are tuning into the calm inside us. And the more we tune in, the more resilient we become. Instead of letting anger, anxiety, or insecurity drive our responses, we start to recognize those emotions as temporary. We become less reactive and more intentional. This ability to pause, to not let every situation pull a reaction out of us, is a superpower in today's fast-paced world. Think about the times when you've said something in the heat of the moment, words you later regretted. Now, think about the times you chose to stay quiet, let the moment pass, and responded later with a calm mind. Which choice brought more peace? Which one protected your relationships, your integrity, and your sense of self? Silence gives us that control. It gives us the ability to respond or react. And in that gap between impulse and action, we build strength. Inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't need validation. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are and doesn't need to prove it. Silence helps us build that kind of confidence. When we're not busy defending ourselves or trying to impress others, we start to see ourselves more clearly. We begin to understand our values, our purpose, and our worth. We stop being swayed by the opinions of others because we're rooted in something deeper, something internal and unshakable. Moreover, silence teaches us discipline. In a culture where it's easy to vent online, argue over trivial matters, or fill awkward moments with meaningless chatter, staying silent requires effort. It's not passive. It's powerful. It takes self-restraint to hold your tongue when provoked. It takes courage to choose silence over confrontation. But every time we do it, we're training our emotional muscles. We're becoming stronger, more centered, and more grounded. There's also a practical side to this. In professional settings, those who speak less but say more are often respected more. People notice when someone chooses their words wisely. Silence commands attention. It creates mystery. It signals thoughtfulness and composure. And in moments of tension, the one who remains calm and silent often holds the most power, not because they dominate others, but because they dominate themselves. Silence opens up the space for creativity, clarity, and insight. When we're constantly talking or being talked at, there's no room to hear our own inner voice. But in silence, we reconnect with ourselves. We gain perspective. We find solutions that noise would have drowned out. In the end, silence is not about withdrawal. It's about wisdom. It's the space in which strength is built, where emotions are mastered, and where control becomes a choice rather than a struggle. When we learn to be silent, not just externally, but internally, we unlock a version of ourselves that is more powerful, more focused, and more fulfilled. And that's where everything begins. In today's world, where everyone seems to be in a rush to speak, to respond, and to be heard, the value of deep listening often gets overlooked. Yet it is through listening, not just hearing, but truly listening, that we build the most meaningful and powerful human connections. Silence plays a vital role in this process. When we are silent, we allow space for others to speak, to open up, and to be themselves without interruption. In that space, trust begins to grow and relationships begin to deepen. Listening deeply is not a passive act. It is an intentional choice to be fully present with someone. It requires us to silence our internal dialogue, to stop preparing our next response while the other person is still talking, and instead give our full attention to their words, tone, and body language. This kind of silence is not empty. It is full of attention, care, and empathy, and in return, people feel seen, heard, and valued, something we all crave, often more than we realize. When we listen deeply, we're not just gathering information. We are showing the other person that they matter. In a conversation, when someone realizes that they are being truly listened to, something shifts. They open up more, they trust more, they become more honest, more vulnerable. This is how strong bonds are formed, whether it's in our personal relationships, our professional lives, or even in brief encounters with strangers. The act of listening can create a moment of connection that has lasting impact. One of the most powerful things silence does is give room for understanding. Misunderstandings and conflicts often arise not from bad intentions, but from poor listening. When we rush to reply or interrupt with our own views, we miss the heart of what the other person is trying to communicate. But when we pause, remain silent, and truly listen, not just to the words, but to the feelings behind the words, we begin to understand people at a deeper level. And understanding is the foundation of compassion and respect. Deep listening also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we don't have all the answers, and that every person we meet knows something we don't. By staying silent and attentive, we open ourselves to learning. We allow others to share their perspectives, their experiences, and their wisdom. This not only enriches our own knowledge, but also makes others feel valued and respected. In this way, silence becomes a bridge, not a barrier. Furthermore, listening deeply gives us the ability to influence and lead more effectively. The most impactful leaders are not the ones who talk the most, but the ones who listen the best. They understand their team, their clients, their audience. They listen to concerns, ideas, and feedback. This makes people feel safe, involved, and motivated. In contrast, when leaders fail to listen, they lose touch. And when they lose touch, they lose trust. So silence, when used to truly listen, becomes a tool of leadership and influence. In conflict resolution, silence and listening can transform tense situations. When one person chooses to listen instead of reacting, the emotional temperature drops. The other person feels less attacked and more understood, which often leads to calmer, more constructive dialogue. The simple act of listening can be more disarming than any argument, more persuasive than any debate. Finally, deep listening also benefits us internally. When we are silent and listen to others, we start to better understand ourselves. We see our own habits, biases, and reactions more clearly. We learn patience and empathy. We grow emotionally. In essence, every time we listen with silence, we not only connect with others, we evolve. So while speaking may give us a voice, listening gives us power. And it is in the silence between words that the strongest connections are formed. In a world filled with constant motion, noise, and distraction, the ability to pause and observe has become a rare skill. Stillness, both physical and mental, offers us a powerful advantage in the sharpening of observation and awareness. When we are silent and still, we begin to notice what we usually overlook. We become more attuned to the subtle details of our environment, the emotions of others, and the truth of our own inner state. In this way, silence becomes the doorway to clarity and deeper understanding. When the mind is quiet, it starts to function more like a mirror, reflecting what is without distortion. In the stillness, we become aware of things we've been too busy to noticing: the shift in someone's tone, the tension in a room, the way certain patterns repeat in our lives. This awareness is not just passive observation, it is active insight. It helps us understand situations more accurately, make better decisions, and act with greater precision. Think of a chess player. The best ones don't rush to make a move. They sit in silence, study the board, and anticipate what's coming. They don't act on impulse, they act on awareness. In life, we are constantly presented with choices and challenges. Those who cultivate stillness and observation are able to move through life with a kind of calm intelligence. They see what others miss. They respond rather than react. And in doing so, they often make fewer mistakes and earn more respect. Stillness also helps us become more aware of our own thoughts and emotions. When we are constantly moving, talking, or engaging with the outside world, we often operate on autopilot. We say things we don't mean. We act without thinking. But when we take time to be silent and still, we start to notice what's going on beneath the surface. We become conscious of the narratives we tell ourselves, the fears that drive us, and the beliefs that shape our actions. This kind of self-awareness is the foundation of personal growth and emotional intelligence. Being still doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing one very important thing: observing without interference. It is in this practice that we begin to master the art of presence. We stop being dragged by the past or pushed by the future. We arrive in the moment, fully aware. And when we are present, we connect more deeply with people, with our purpose, and with life itself. Silence and stillness also enhance our creativity. The greatest ideas often emerge not when we are speaking or multitasking, but when we are quiet, walking alone, sitting in nature, or simply staring out the window. In those quiet moments, the mind starts to piece things together in new ways. Patterns emerge, solutions appear, creativity flows. This is not a coincidence. Stillness allows the subconscious mind to surface, and in that space, innovation is born. In relationships, observational awareness helps us become more empathetic and responsive. We notice the small signs: a forced smile, a moment of hesitation, a shift in body language. These cues speak volumes, and when we catch them, we can respond with care, support, or understanding. This ability to read the room doesn't come from speaking. It comes from watching, listening, and being present. Ultimately, stillness is a kind of wisdom. It teaches us to stop rushing, to stop assuming, and to start noticing. And with that noticing comes power, the power to understand, to act wisely, and to live more fully. In a world that pushes us to always be doing, those who learn to pause and observe gain a unique edge. They become the calm in the storm, the clarity in confusion, the insight amid distraction. So while the world chases action, those who cultivate stillness quietly sharpen their vision. And with sharper vision, they move ahead, not by chance, but by choice. In our fast-paced world, where communication is instant and constant, the idea of holding back from speaking may seem unnatural or even counterproductive. Yet, those who practice self-discipline in speech often discover something profound: clarity in thought. When we discipline ourselves to speak less, to pause before we respond, and to measure our words carefully, we begin to organize our thinking in a way that is more precise, more intentional, and ultimately more powerful. Every time we speak, we give shape to our thoughts. But if those thoughts are rushed, cluttered, or reactive, the words we choose will reflect that. Discipline in speech forces us to slow down, to evaluate what we're thinking, and to decide whether it even needs to be said at all. This process naturally clears the mental fog. When we stop blurting out every emotion or opinion as it arises, we begin to engage our deeper thinking. We ask ourselves, is this necessary? Is it kind? Is it true? Will it help? This filter sharpens the mind. When we're not constantly filling the air with our voice, we create space for reflection. And in that space, thought matures. We gain insight not just into situations around us, but into ourselves. We start recognizing patterns in our speech. When we speak out of fear, when we speak to impress, when we speak to control. As we become more aware of these tendencies, we learn to manage them. That's real self-mastery. And it begins with discipline. There is a saying, the more you say, the less people listen. This is especially true when our speech is unfiltered or scattered. People respect those who speak with purpose and intention. When we are selective with our words, each one carries more weight. We become known as someone who doesn't speak often. But when we do, it matters. That kind of clarity in speech starts with clarity in thought, which is only possible when we resist the urge to constantly speak and instead take time to think deeply. Silence, in this context, becomes an act of strength, not avoidance. It is the space we give ourselves to process, to assess, and to refine our inner voice. When we do this consistently, we begin to notice a transformation. Our thoughts become more structured. Our decisions become more deliberate. Our interactions become more meaningful. We move from reacting impulsively to responding mindfully. That shift is the essence of maturity and wisdom. Moreover, disciplined speech can drastically improve relationships. Many conflicts and misunderstandings arise from words spoken in haste, words that cannot be taken back. When we cultivate the habit of thinking before speaking, we prevent unnecessary harm. We become better listeners, better communicators, and more trustworthy individuals. People feel safe around those who don't lash out or overshare, but who speak with calm and purpose. This form of discipline also helps in personal growth. When we stop speaking just to fill silence, we learn to sit with discomfort, to observe our inner dialogue, and to grow from it. We start recognizing when our words are driven by ego, insecurity, or the need for approval. We can then choose to speak from a place of truth rather than impulse. That's when our voice becomes not just louder, but clearer, more authentic, and more aligned with who we truly are. In professional life, this clarity is invaluable. Leaders who speak with intention inspire confidence. Writers who use fewer but more meaningful words capture hearts. Negotiators who know when to pause and listen gain leverage. In every field, the ability to think clearly and speak with purpose is a mark of excellence. Ultimately, self-discipline in speech isn't about silence for silence's sake. It's about developing a thoughtful inner world that gives rise to meaningful expression. And when we master that, we don't just speak better. We live better, because a clear mind leads to clear choices, and clear choices shape a powerful life. In a society that often equates loudness with confidence and visibility with success, the idea that quiet confidence commands more respect than loud ambition may seem surprising. But if you observe closely, you'll notice a consistent pattern: those who carry themselves with calm assurance, who do not seek validation through noise or constant self-promotion. are often the ones others look up to the most. Quiet confidence isn't flashy. It doesn't demand attention. It earns it silently, steadily, and powerfully. True confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It's not about dominating a room or having the final word in every conversation. It's about presence. It's about how someone stands, listens, observes, and speaks only when it truly adds value. This kind of confidence is rooted not in ego, but in self-awareness and self-belief. It comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you're capable of without needing to prove it to anyone else. Loud ambition often reveals insecurity. When people constantly talk about their plans, their goals, and their achievements, it can sometimes come from a need to be seen, to be affirmed, to convince others and themselves of their worth. But quiet confidence speaks a different language. It says, I know what I'm doing, and I don't need to broadcast it. This subtle power often carries more instant aggressive ambition because it creates a sense of reliability and composure that others naturally respect. Consider a room full of voices. The one who speaks the loudest may grab initial attention, but the one who waits, listens, and then speaks with calm conviction often leaves the most lasting impression. People trust those who appear stable and grounded. They associate quiet confidence with thoughtfulness, wisdom, and strength. There is a magnetism in someone who doesn't need to perform, who is content to let their actions, not their words, speak for them. In professional settings, this becomes even more apparent. The most respected leaders are often not the ones who boast, but those who carry a quiet sense of authority. Their presence reassures their teams. Their measured words carry weight. They don't try to outshine others. They uplift them. They listen more than they speak, and when they speak, people listen. That's because quiet confidence creates an environment of trust. It signals that you're in control, not just of the situation, but of yourself. This kind of confidence also brings stability in times of stress. When everyone else is panicking or rushing to respond, the person who remains calm and composed becomes the anchor. People gravitate toward that energy. In crisis or conflict, the quiet, confident voice often becomes the voice of reason. It calms the storm not by overpowering it, but by refusing to be shaken by it. In relationships, too, quiet confidence is deeply attractive. It allows space for others to be themselves without feeling overshadowed or judged. It fosters a sense of mutual respect and openness. It's not about controlling the conversation, but about contributing meaningfully when it matters most. That kind of connection is rare and deeply valued. Quiet confidence is also sustainable. Loud ambition may burn bright for a while, but it can also burn out quickly. It often relies on external motivation, recognition, approval, competition. But quiet confidence is fueled from within. It doesn't fade when applause stops. It stays steady because it's based on real growth, real understanding, and a deep-rooted belief in one's purpose. At its core, quiet confidence is not about doing less. It's about doing more with less noise. It's about building substance over show, resilience over recognition, and strength over style. And in the long run, it is this silent strength that earns not just success, but lasting respect. In the journey of life, it is natural to desire immediate results. We chase dreams, set goals, and expect outcomes on our timeline. But reality often teaches us that the most meaningful and rewarding things come not through force or haste, but through patience, particularly the kind of patience that exists in silence. The ability to wait quietly without anxiety, without rushing, and without constantly seeking attention is one of the most powerful and underrated qualities a person can develop. It is in this silent patience that the right opportunities begin to find their way to us. Silence creates a kind of space that attracts clarity. When we are not constantly talking, pushing, or seeking, we give life room to unfold in its own way. This doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing what we must with consistency and intention, then letting go of the desperate need to control every outcome. There is incredible strength in those who can plant the seed, nurture it silently, and trust the process. They are the ones who ultimately reap the richest harvests. Opportunities, especially the ones that align with our deeper purpose, often appear when we least expect them. When we are focused on becoming the best version of ourselves rather than proving ourselves, people who operate with silent patience tend to exude a calm energy that others notice. They're not chasing everything, they're choosing wisely. They're not desperate to be seen, they're working on being valuable. That distinction makes all the difference. It's often those who are silently building, learning, and preparing who are offered the doors to walk through them is right. Life doesn't reward noise, it rewards alignment. And alignment takes time. It requires a deep understanding of who you are, what you want, and the willingness to trust that what is meant for you will not miss you. Silence helps you stay connected to that understanding. It keeps you grounded while the world around you is spinning in a rush to be first, fastest, or most famous. The one who is silent and focused doesn't get distracted. They wait. They prepare. And when their moment comes, they are ready. Patience in silence also builds resilience. When things don't go your way immediately, silence helps you reflect instead of react. It helps you ask better questions. What can I learn from this? How can I improve? Is this delay a redirection? While others complain or panic, the silent one listens to life, to themselves, the subtle signs all around them. And in that quiet reflection, they often find a new path forward, one they wouldn't have seen in noise or haste. Another beautiful aspect of silent patience is that it helps us stay humble. It teaches us that not everything has to happen on our schedule. It softens the ego and strengthens the soul. We stop competing with everyone around us and start focusing on the only competition that matters, becoming better than who we were yesterday. That internal growth, cultivated in silence, becomes the foundation for external success. And when opportunities finally arrive, as they often do for those who are quietly consistent, there's a calm readiness that shines through. The person who has waited in silence is not overwhelmed by the moment. They are not caught off guard. They don't need to prove themselves because they've already done the work day after day quietly. Their success is not a surprise. It is a reflection of the silent effort they've been making all along. So while the world shouts and rushes, choose to be still, choose to be silent, trust the process, let your preparation speak for you when the opportunity comes. Because in that quiet space, far from the noise, everything you need will begin to find its way to you, naturally, perfectly, and right on time.